This is the electronic disconnect system for 2007 to 2019 JKs. And again, this is the electronic disconnect system. So basically what happens with these is the seals and the gasket that goes here fails. It gets rainwater and dirt and everything else in there, and everything just gets all gooped up and starts rusting, and it's just a matter of time, and the disconnect system for the sway bars just stops working. Either it gets stuck in the unlocked position, or it gets stuck in the locked position, and either you're out wheeling and you go to lock your sway bar back up again and it won't engage, or you get to the off-road park and you try to disconnect to go wheeling and it's stuck and won't disconnect. It'll be probably either be one or the other. Well, it can only be one or the other. So anyway, I took everything apart, and I'll go ahead and I'll shoot how I'm going to put this back together, and you would just take it apart in the reverse order. I was going to film everything, from start to finish, but greasing everything got really messy, and it was taking too long, and it would have been too long of a video, and everything would have just been a mess. We'll go through it. You would just take it apart in the reverse order. That's all. So at this point, I cleaned everything up. I greased the inner sprocket here, or gear wheel, or whatever we want to call it. So this is the short end, and this is the long end. So this ring gear sits inside of this piece right here, and this thing is shaped like a horseshoe, and the ring gear basically just sits in there. Be careful when you're taking this together, because this right here is a washer. There's a large washer that sits in there, and this gear on the small side, it doesn't come off. The gaskets and the seals. So this is the old gasket, and as you can see, it's ripped. So they do not sell a seal kit or a gasket kit for this. I called the dealer. I got one of the guys from that's a fellow Jeeper that works in the parts department at one of the local dealerships. I called him. He called around, called a couple of his buddies, just to make sure there wasn't something available that we just didn't know of. And there isn't. Basically, when these go bad, Jeep wants you to purchase a new one, and it's $1,800. So either you service it yourself or you fork out the money. Those are your two options. And again, there's no gasket set, so you have to make your own. So what I did was I took a sheet of gasket material. I took the old gasket, traced it out, cut it out with just a sharp razor blade, and the new gasket will go like so. Again, they do not make a gasket kit for this. You're on your own. I'm going to flip this over. Here, I'll grab the short side. And you can see here, there's actually a seal, rubber seal here. They don't make that either. So what I'm doing with this to keep it watertight is I drilled 2 holes. And this is a 1/4 inch 20 thread pattern. So drill it, tap it for 1/4 inch 20. And I actually installed 2 grease ports. These were not here. You have to drill and tap it yourself. So that's what I did. I just drilled 2 holes. Again, this is 1/4 inch 20. So the idea is, once we get everything back together, we're going to use the 2 grease ports, fill the whole thing up with grease until it starts oozing out the seals, and at that point it's full. Alright, so I decided to go ahead and take this thing apart. I had it the ring gear I actually had everything put back together, but I took it apart because I figured I'd show you guys how everything kind of goes back together. So this inner gear right here, that does not come off. It's pressed in. There's supposed to be a C-clip behind it. I didn't mess with it because they don't make a seal kit for this anyway. So even if you do get it all apart, it's like, well, you know, what are you going to do? You can't buy a seal kit for it, so you're kind of SOL. And the seal kit that I'm referring to is that right there. It's just a rubber seal that goes around the tube. And that's usually where it starts cracking and allowing, you know, moisture and water to get in, and also the gasket that goes around here. That also dries out and cracks, and you know, mine, when I took it apart, I saw it actually had a crack in it, and it was, you know, split. Start putting this thing together. So you have the ring gear on the long side, and that just fits in there like so. There's a little spring. This is the first step to reassembling this. This little spring goes right there. Don't forget this spring. If you forget it, it's not going to work right, and you have to tear everything back apart. So remember the spring. We want to take this little washer right here, and that goes right in the middle of the inner gear. So I found the easiest way. This is offset. It has two indentations on each end, and this is offset, and it also has two larger teeth. So it only goes on a certain way. So what I did is I started it a little bit, and then I took this, and that's just the horseshoe piece that I was talking about that this thing sits in. And this thing is a little bit of a pain to line up, which is kind of why I didn't want to take it back apart, but I wanted to show you guys how this goes back together. So that time it went in pretty good. It wasn't that bad. The first time it took me a little bit longer. I guess practice makes perfect. So, and this is going on about as well as I expected it to. I figured this was probably going to be a pain, and it is. Alright, there it goes. So once it's lined back up, snug up a couple of the bolts, just kind of help, you know, hold it in place. And I'm just, you know, snugging them up just a little bit to help kind of hold this, you know, together. Because once it's on there, I don't want it to come back apart. And the gasket paper, I just got it from AutoZone. And it is the rubberized compound. And again, I'm not cranking them down. I'm just, you know, snugging them up a little bit to help hold everything in place. Make sure you Loctite these. You don't want to go through all this and, you know, these come loose on you and start leaking and everything else and have to do this all over again. You're probably going to have to do this every year or two anyway, but I'm going to try and prolong it, I guess, as much as we can. And that's why I installed those grease fittings, because this way we can just fill the whole thing with grease until it's, oozing out the seals. And at that point, it's full, and that'll help keep the water and all the crap out of it. 30 is probably going to be about it. These are aluminum, so I don't want to torque it much more than that. Everything's torqued down to 30 foot-pounds. If somebody finds a torque rating on this, let me know. I looked all over the place. I looked in the Haynes manual. I couldn't find anything, not on these. So this is aluminum, so 30 pounds should be plenty. But again, if somebody finds a torque spec on these, definitely comment. All right, so just to show you guys how this works is, bear with me, this is kind of awkward. Right there, that actually is a plunger, and it pushes in. And when the motor pushes that in, it pushes the gears over and releases the sway bar and unlocks it. And here, we'll do it real quick. Come on. There it goes. As you can see, now it's unlocked and it moves. And the spring that's in there, when you bring it back, it'll lock it back in place. Now, when the motor's on here, and I'll show you how to, put that back on, and you would just, do the reverse procedure for removing the motor. But when the motor is in there and it's activated, it pushes this out, and it pushes down the plunger, and it keeps it pushed out. So this is free to rotate back and forth. And when you would, be done off-roading, you would just hit the button again on the dash. This plunger would, this button here would retract back. The spring pushes the plunger back, and at this point it's locked again. So I just wanted to show you guys how that works. This is the motor itself. I have it torn apart because I have to repair it, because this was all the gaskets failed. So I took it all apart, I cleaned it up, and I'm going to have to, put it back together, but I'm still in the process of that. And this is the main board, the electronics. So the motor is just held on by 3 bolts. It'll be there, there, and there. And just goes back on like so. And it's kind of hard for me to hold it because I'm trying to do this with one hand so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. But it would just be 3 bolts to remove this motor, and then the whole thing would slide out like this. Here we have the EVO No Limits, and this is the manual knob that basically replaces the electronic motor for the Rubicon sway bar. So if your motor fries out, this is a good option. It's about $100, but it does the job. And this gets rid of the electronics altogether. One thing I want to mention, you will have to make a new gasket if your old one is no good. Mine was okay, but I replaced it anyway because it's 10 years old, but or it looked like it was 10 years old anyway. So I just made another one. I just traced it out and cut it out. Now it's time to get this thing on here. Get the bolts ready. And you're just going to use the original bolts that came with it. One thing I want to mention the EVO No Limits comes with this little washer, and it just goes on the end of the spring like that. So this will actually put it in the plunger first, and then this will just kind of ride on that spring. So there's a close-up so you can see where the washer goes. You can go ahead and get this on here. So when you're putting this on, make sure the end of the spring goes in the plunger. And make sure you put Loctite on the bolts. And I'm just starting to snug it up. At this point, everything's together. And come down this side a little bit just so you can see how it's put together on this side. And it's real simple how it works. You just turn the knob in until it stops, and see, it just released it, so everything's, at this point the sway bar is unlocked. And to lock it, you just turn it counterclockwise until it stops, and it just locks. See, it's locked. So it works well. If you have issues with your electronic motor for this, you can get the EVO knob and just do it manually. I have to rebuild the motor for this, but that's going to be a different video. So if you want to use the EVO No Limits knob, you just follow this procedure. Alright, so I have the track bar back on, and there's the EVO knob. And to put it on, it's just 4 bolts. You have 2 bolts for the track bar bracket on each side, there and there, and then just the end links on each side. And it's tucked up under there pretty nice, actually. And the only thing that I can think of to mention on the Rubicon bracket, it has this bar right here, and it has a muffler clamp, and this is just a rubber muffler clamp that goes on the motor. There's a bolt that goes through the top, and then the bottom, slides onto the bracket here. And you just turn it in to unlock the track bar, and then you just turn it all the way out to put it back in the lock position. No electronics to worry about. This should work out well. Alright, so we'll just do one more shot of the track bar and the end link. That side. And I kept my quick disconnects on. That way, in case I ever want to fully disconnect, I can. So I think that wraps it up.